22. Right now we're seeing it up almost 1,400. ABC News business reporter Alexis Christoforous is taking a look at the numbers for us. What's your takeaway from how markets are reacting to this, Alexis?
I don't think it's a big surprise. When you look at history, markets tend to rally just before and right after an election. The fact that this election has now been called, that we're not waiting days to understand who the winner is, nothing's being contested, it takes away a huge question mark for Wall Street and investors, and we know how much they hate uncertainty. So in some regards, didn't matter so much if it were Trump or Harris. The fact that we got a winner and it was as smooth as it was is seen as a positive for the market.
This large number of voters saying they are worse off than they were 4 years ago. How do you square that with recent economic reports that we've gotten and what those numbers say about the state of the economy right now? Why the disconnect here?
Yeah, for a long time, right, we've been talking about for months how this election was really going to be a referendum on the economy, and that's what's come to pass. And I think when people think about the economy and their wallet, they're not thinking about GDP numbers, right, and job numbers. They're thinking about how does this affect me when I go shopping? What does it mean when I fill up my gas tank? Oh, housing costs are through the roof. We saw young people come out in droves, especially young men, for President-elect Trump. And one of the reasons why they said was, look, we can't seem to get ahead. It was easier for our parents to buy a home and to save money than it is for me, and they thought that Trump was the better candidate.
So what do you make of the state of the economy going into now this next administration, and what are you watching for?
Well, there are so many question marks now. When you look at the policies that President-elect Trump wants to enact, one of them, of course, being higher tariffs. We've heard from a number of economists that could be inflationary, that it could actually turn the Fed from cutting interest rates, which, by the way, they're expected to do tomorrow at their meeting. They could actually be put back on inflation watch. And perhaps if these higher tariffs come to pass, if other countries retaliate, we could see the Fed move in the opposite direction and start raising interest rates again, because inflation would start to be reignited.
There were a lot of debates about inflation coming out of COVID and how long COVID stimulus should last. A lot of debates back and forth between politicians and also between economists. Do the results now, having seen what ended up happening with inflation and how long that lasted, and the fact that we're still dealing with the repercussions, could it change that conversation going forward?
You know, I think when it comes to inflation, it's so much bigger. I mean, we have seen prices rise over the past 4 years and sort of remain high, even though overall inflation, meaning the pace of those price increases, have cooled down. Prices are still higher. And no matter where you live in this country or what your situation might be, you are paying more for basic things like food and like housing. And that's what resonated with voters. And a lot of the policies that Trump is putting out there, he's claiming he'll be able to lower those prices. But, you know, these tax cuts that he's talking about extending, those tax cuts he put in place in 2017, were set to expire at the end of next year. We now expect them to be extended. That's going to add to the deficit overall. It could mean economic growth in the short term. It could add to the deficit and be inflationary in the longer term.
And in terms of inflation, often when we talk about inflation, we think about high prices, but they're not really the same thing. Inflation is the rate at which prices increase. So even if inflation levels out, which it has more or less hit the target that the Fed was looking for,
at 2%,
prices are still very high on things like groceries. So what would it take for former President Trump to be able to deliver not just leveling out inflation, but actually lowering some of these high prices people are seeing on everyday items?
It's not